Great. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. I want to call to order the January meeting of the Board of Early Education and Care. I want to thank the YWCA here in Worcester for hosting us today and would like to welcome Deb Hall, President and CEO of the YWCA, to tell us a little bit about the work that you do here. Deb,
Wonderful.
thank you for hosting us.
Thank you, Chair Balsito. First of all, thank you all so much. It's a privilege and an honor to host this board meeting here. We are so excited that you are in Central Massachusetts and that you had a chance to get a tour of this great facility. So welcome Dr. Tutwiler, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, course Chair Balsito, and Vice Chair Moeller, and the rest of the board. YWCA has been in Worcester since 1885 with a really radical mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. We've been a mainstay here. We are a multi-service organization. Our biggest department is the Early Education and Child Care Department here, a high-quality, world-class department we have here. We are also the go-to, the experts when it comes to domestic violence and helping survivors of domestic violence. We have youth programming. We have a health and wellness center. Maybe you saw that wonderful pool we have. And so we do economic empowerment. We have an emergency shelter. We have 5 locations across both Westboro, North Central Mass, and Worcester. So we are doing a number of things, and we are a go-to kind of iconic agency in Worcester. So again, we are so excited to have you all here. This subject matter is dear to our hearts, and we hope to see you back again.
Thank you, Deb. And as Deb mentioned, a few of us had a chance to tour the facility prior to the start of the meeting, and just want to thank you and your entire team. In addition, we'll hear updates from the Commonwealth Cares for Children grant program. And with that, I will turn it over to the Secretary for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last few meetings, I have either deferred my time or been notably brief. That will not be the case this afternoon. I'm starting the new year the right way. And we'll start formally by wishing you, Chair, you, Commissioner, and my board colleagues all the best for a peaceful, safe, and joyous new year. And with the onset of 2024, any new year, actually, we're presented with the opportunity to sort of take stock, reflect and make plans and or renewed commitments for the calendar year ahead. And to be clear, every calendar year is fraught with the competing experiences of challenge and triumph. In fact, they need not be competing. They can actually be complementary. Each challenge we experience provides us an opportunity to learn and grow and be better. And as we begin this new calendar year, this administration's commitment to expanding affordable, high-quality early education and care remains a top priority. I look forward to the work of this board and directly in partnership with Commissioner Kershaw and the team at EEC toward that important end. Last year, we framed policy development and resource allocation according to 3 principles to reflect our understanding of need and opportunity. Those organizing principles, stabilize, heal, and transform, call out the idea that we're still in a recovery period and experiencing challenges that are many in number and deep in nature. Nonetheless, we have a unique opportunity to fundamentally transform opportunities and experiences to for our youngest learners and their families. As you might imagine, we're currently in the throes of putting the final touches on the budget for fiscal year 2025. This is a process that has involved listening and understanding first and foremost, and thinking strategically, leveraging the stabilize, heal, and transform organizing principles. It's not quite time yet to share, but I do look forward to sharing and discussing more substantively both the organizing principles and the framework of the budget in the coming weeks. One area of transformation that I am able to share right now is our newly introduced Future Tech Act. In fact, just yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning. This is a $1.2 billion plan to modernize and improve our state IT system. This includes a $12 million proposal to update the child care financial assistance portal to make it easier for families to navigate. By updating the outdated technology systems, we're able to more effectively and equitably service families and improve our coordination with our early education centers and providers. Beyond that, I look forward to discussing all of the areas that we expect to see transformation in the coming months and the year.
Great.
That is all.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you to you and the administration for your continued support of the department, this board, and providers and children and families across the Commonwealth as we do continue to modernize and ensure that we're creating affordability, quality, and access as best we can. So thank you. Before I hand it over to the commissioner, I do want to acknowledge that board members Carrington, Kane, Ruiz, and Siegel are joining us via phone and are here with us. Commissioner Kershaw, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary. Happy New Year to the board members. We had a pretty impactful 2023, and we're looking forward to the work ahead in 2024. Deb, I just want to say thank you to you and your team for hosting us again. We had an amazing tour. They had to pull me out of the classrooms, and we had a chance to meet staff who've been here for a short time, staff who've been here for a long time. Spent some time in the infant rooms. Then thank you for delivering infant care. We talked about your long waiting list, maybe a year, for families to be able to enroll. We talked about a darkened, empty classroom due to staff shortages. But we also saw a lot of joy and curiosity and teachers passionate about what they were doing and happy to be able to have the opportunity to be doing this work. We talked about the impact of the child care financial assistance changes on families and also on staff here, and some staff who are benefiting from the staff pilot as well. We talked a little bit about the C3 program and how you're using those funds to retain staff, with staff salary increases as well as bonuses, and also to provide behavioral health supports for kids and teachers in classrooms. So it was really amazing to get to see some of the work, and just also a little look back on sort of the early days of COVID, where while many other programs were shutting down in the schools, this program opened up for all the essential workers in town and for many of the medical staff at UMass Medical in Worcester. And so I want to thank you for your incredible service to this community and your radical mission too. So thank you for having us here. I do also have a number of updates. So let me start by, many of you have heard, due to the current revenue picture, that there were a rebalancing exercise that happened across state government, which is a reduction into the existing year's fiscal budget. For EEC, we were about a $15 million reduction in our FY24 budget across sort of three areas. The first was a $7 million that was actually carryover funds from FY23 that otherwise would have been available for a rate increase. We were very committed, and this administration was incredibly committed to supporting the full $65 million. So we might have had 72, but we were very happy to be able to maintain that $65 million, and we'll be talking about that today, so that was a high priority. There was another $3 million that was intended for eligibility and IT technological investments. That was also carryover funds from FY23. And as you heard the Secretary say, there's a bond bill that's been filed that is actually a $12 million proposal to invest in a new, modern, dignified, respectful IT system for our families. And so we don't expect an impact on families or providers from that reduction either. The third reduction was in $5 million taken from an earmark for our staff pilot. But as many of you are aware, we've now included that. We keep calling it a pilot, which is child care financial assistance for staff working in early education and care programs. But we're serving those staff through our regular caseload accounts. And so we'll be picking up additional families through that pilot. And that, I know the team has been very focused on making sure that we're continuing to push the lever on that pilot. We're reaching almost 2,000 kids now through that, and we have incorporated it permanently into our policies as a priority population. It's been really essential for recruiting and retaining staff and programs, so we look forward to continuing that program as well. So difficult decisions being made across state government around this mid-year necessary rebalancing in mid-year, but impact mitigated at the agency. So we feel pretty fortunate for that and grateful for the leadership that enabled that for us. I also wanted to share some good news. I had a chance to share with some of all of you that earlier this week, and relevant also to a discussion we're having, that the agency formally received our approval for an alternative methodology to the market rate survey, something that many people have been working on for a long time, but I want to recognize Amy Checkaway and her team, Jocelyn Bound, who's been leading this work too. It's been a long time coming, and not only did they approve us to, moving forward, do an alternative methodology, but also have provided flexibility for us to start using alternative methodology to the market rate survey, something that many people have been working. Sorry, like, that's the worst. To hear yourself. So not only did they approve the alternative methodology going forward, but we had also requested some flexibility so that we could start using that alternative methodology starting July 1st, 2025, in order to avoid having to do another market rate survey and be subject to those. And they have approved that flexibility for us as well, which is terrific. So we will continue to use market rate as we also really move into understanding costs and using that. But I think the days of using purely the price and the market are behind us, and I think we're all happy to see that door close. I'm also happy to announce that on the 16th we're going to be posting two requests for proposals for our Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative. So there was additional funds provided in the FY24 budget to do two things. One is for existing grantees to be able to expand their programming. So for an existing CPPI community, we're going to be providing funding to add additional classrooms, additional itinerant services, provide greater access and affordability. So we look forward to receiving those. Also happy to say that a portion of those funds will be used for planning for communities that are not yet participating in the CPPI program. We have a priority for our gateway cities, but we'll be entertaining proposals from others, and we look forward to helping communities come into the CPPI initiative. We are anticipating highlighting a little bit more about that program for those of you on the board who don't know about it at our February board meeting. So we'll have an opportunity to share. Secretary and I have been out visiting programs and communities that have CPPI programs, and there are amazing partnerships happening across the state that are ensuring greater access and equity to high-quality preschool for kids across the Commonwealth. And we are pretty excited about this initiative as a way to really move to greater universal access, especially for 4-year-olds across the state. So we're going to look forward next month to be able to share with you additional details about that program. And I think that is the end of my update. Thank
Excellent.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Good updates, and congratulations to you and the team on receiving approval from the feds on changing the methodology in which we do this, and also want to extend gratitude to this board for continuing to be focused on that topic and seeing the results this week of the progress we're making to bring equity across the state and to ensure that we're partnering with our providers in a way that reimburses them for the true cost of what they're doing on behalf of children and families. And so it is a true partnership, and just want to extend my gratitude to the board as well. Moving to the public comment portion of the meeting, I would like to call up Johanna Mawson from the Worcester Family Partnership to offer some remarks. I also want to acknowledge that the board has received public comment by email and has been distributed to the entire board prior to the start of this meeting. Welcome, Johanna.
Thank you. My name is Joanna Mawson, and I attend our local CFCE, which is Worcester Family Partnership. My daughter is 20 months old, and we go various days throughout the week. Our program in our neighborhood is actually from 10 to 11:30 every single day. And so we can choose a day that works for myself, or if my parents are watching her, they can pop in. We've just found a true community at this playgroup. It's a great place for us caregivers to really talk to each other and sort of see that village in action. And in addition, the teachers that are promoting the program that come together with activities, stories, music, a lot of opportunities to take books home with you to really promote literacy with these young children ages 0 to 5 and up in the off-school times. We're so grateful to have this. It has a huge impact on our family, but I also know it has a really big impact on a lot of families who can't be here because they actually come to the playgroup. They walk. They don't have transportation. And so just want to thank you all for the support you give to that program. I have friends who live in other states who have nothing like this, and just want to share how impactful it is both to me but also to others who can't be here to share that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next up, we have Joe Chan as well. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jo Chen. I moved to the United States 2 years ago with my then 2-year-old. Yeah, so we are new to the country. So one of the first thing I did before coming here was to go online and search for any resources I can find, particularly about early childhood, childcare, and education. So many people directed me to my local CFCE and shared their experiences with me. So this was like the first thing I went to search and find out about. And I realized that once we started attending the playgroup, we were directed to many other resources that are available in the community. At the same time, like what was shared by the previous lady, the playgroups that we attend in person allow my child to learn the social skills that he would not have been able to get, just staying at home with me alone. It also allowed me as a parent to learn a lot of things, because being a first-time mom, I think a lot of people expect parents to know how to engage and play with children, but they don't realize that it is not something that we have been taught before. It's not in our education. So attending these playgroups allow me to learn from the facilitators there and also the parents that I interact with. So it is a very enriching experience for both my child and I. And the interesting thing is the playgroups are not just simply something where they put out the toys and there's some books, we do a story time. There's a variety of programs that they look out for to ensure that there is a more holistic development for the child as they attend the playgroup. So like we've been with them for 2 years, attending the playgroups regularly, but as my child grows up, he gets exposed to new experiences because of the variety of programs that they have. Yeah, so we're very thankful to have found this, and I've been sharing this with every new parent that I've come across who have just moved to Worcester. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing your son. He's adding some good fun to the room here today. So and very well behaved. So.
So these are the things that he learns, you see, because if he's just alone with the parent, there's a limited experience that he will receive from me. But being in a playgroup and playing with other children, he learns other skills.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to invite Amira Mondwi. Hello.
My name is Amira. I would like to thank the program, the Worcester Family Partnership. I am a mom of 2 children, 9 and 4. My son, he's 4 years old. He got really prepared and ready to preschool through the playgroup that we used to attend. He learned a lot. He learned how to sit, listen to books and stories, and how to share. He was born at the beginning of the pandemic, so he is really lonely. He didn't meet with any children, not my relatives, not my friends or neighbors. So when we start going to the playgroup, he really learned a lot, and he learned to follow rules. So when he went to preschool this year, even his teachers were amazed of how he is following the rules and know how to sit still and listen to stories and share toys. So he learned a lot. I'm really thankful.
Well,
Thank you.
Amira, Jahan, and Joe, thank you for being here today and sharing your voice to us on the importance of this program, and grateful for your attendance today. So thank you. We have one item of routine business, and then we are going to take a quick tech break after that, just to reconcile some sound issues here. But before us, we do have the minutes of the December 13th, 2023 board meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or edits from the board? Hearing none, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 13th, 2023 meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Maria, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Abstain? And the minutes of the December 13th board meeting are approved. This time we'll take a quick 5-minute break. I apologize, and we'll just try to reconcile the sound here and get. And we will keep on the agenda, and I'll turn it over to the commissioner to tee up our next agenda item on early education out of school time regulation changes.
Great, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Chairman, and apologies to around technology. We are really committed to moving around the state so that we have an opportunity to hear from programs and constituents and family members like we did today in different parts of the state, and make it easier for you to see us and hear us and talk to us. But that means that we are not always operating from our home field IT capacity, so apologies. Yeah. All right, we're going to keep going and see. So as the members know, we have 3 primary agenda items today, including 2 votes. First is a return to talking about our early education and out-of-school time capital fund program and an update on our overall capital investment strategy for this year, because it's multi-pronged, which is very exciting. And we'll be asking you to approve our regulation changes so that we can promulgate those and move forward permanently around a change to our EOS Capital Fund program. We'll come back on a follow-up from last month's conversation around our child care financial assistance rates, and we have a recommendation that we'll be putting forward around both rate increases and reforms that we will be seeking the board's approval on to move forward on in this fiscal year. And then we're very pleased to be able to share the most recent update from our fall survey of the Commonwealth Cares for Children, or C3 program. So it should be a good agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to Jose Mendez, Neil Flynn, and Jocelyn Bound, who will walk us through an update on our overall child care facilities investment planning and lead us through what we hope will be your support for changes to our regulations.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
You are going to have to speak up.
Thank you. So just to introduce the topic, we are returning to the early education and out-of-school time grants. We've, I think, discussed these at a couple of different meetings, but we're really just so happy that we have a couple of different funding sources to support capital investments across the field. As a reminder, the EOST grant has been around for a very long time. It was funded with a bond bill a number of years back and has originally provided investments for large-scale capital expenses for not-for-profit providers, serving a significant number of children with subsidies. Over the years, we experimented with also providing the option of smaller grants, and we found that both the large and the small grants were very effective and successful, and so are moving into a year where we are able to provide both sizes through the EOS grant. We also have funding from the Fair Share budget line that allows us to also provide small grants to center-based providers who do not meet the not-for-profit category. So we're really able to expand that opportunity and are very excited and deeply committed in developing a program to support family child care educators as well, which has been a group that has not had access to much in the way of supports for capital funding. And we are in the process of developing that particular grant program. And I will turn it over to Jose to give us an update on the status right now of some of these different parts of the grants.
Sure. So as you may recall, we were posting the center-based small grants, and we posted both those small grants for the small nonprofit and for the small for-profit applicants. We also, on December 20th, posted the large grants for the nonprofit entities as well. We're in the middle of our info sessions. We had an info session yesterday. We'll have another info session for the large grant applicants for tomorrow. And we also completed our info sessions about how to move forward with developing. You are muted. Sorry. No, no worries.
Do it the other way.
No, that's okay. No, no problems.
You are unmuted.
Okay. And so what we're doing is right now we're in the middle of summarizing all the information we received from the 500 plus participants that came to the RFI info session for FCCs. And hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have a draft summation for the commissioner to review and be looking forward to quickly developing a plan for how we're going to support FCCs in capital improvements.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, I think there is an enormous need and interest among our family child care community and among our staff in supporting capital investments in family child care providers. Our first effort was really to try and identify a partner who could help us do this work. And I know there was some confusion out there in the field about, so we had put out a request for information to identify a potential partner who could actually manage a capital grant program for us. But I think there's so much need and demand for this that I know our family child care providers are eager for us to move forward. So we hope to be able to identify a partner and a strategy to be able to start getting grants out as soon as possible. But this effort was really to try and identify, like we have on the center-based side with CDAC and the Children's Investment Fund, a similar partner who could manage the grant programs for us and provide the technical assistance that our family child care providers need. It's not something that we have internal capacity to do right now. So that's our first step, and that's what we just concluded. So we hope to be able to kind of move forward and be able to make those capital grant funding and technical assistance available to family child care very soon. So thank you for your patience, and I apologize for any confusion that sort of this multi-step process may have created. Great. Oh, okay. Now, as Jose and Jocelyn have said, and I just want to recognize Carolyn Kane. For the last several years, we've been coming back to the board for emergency regulations to allow us to continue to do small grants. And board member Kane said, it seems like it's a pretty good idea. Maybe you want to just come back to us and make it permanent. And so indeed, we have now done that work, and happy to be in front of you with a set of regulation revisions that you all approved to go out to public comment. And I'm going to turn it over to Neil. I think we did receive some public comment, and we are ready to move forward to ask for your support on a vote.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and Happy New Year to all the members of the board. As the Commissioner mentioned, the last few years, EEC has amended its EEOST capital fund regulations for the purposes of providing flexibility to EEC, allow EEC to award both larger traditional size grants, but also smaller size grants, specifically in the range of $200,000 to $500,000. At the board meeting last November, we once again presented amendments for the board's consideration. However, this time around, these amendments would ultimately allow the flexibility I just described on a permanent basis. The board, as the Commissioner mentioned, the board did approve these amendments for public comment. Since that time, the public has been properly notified. A public comment period has transpired, and we did receive one correspondence. It was from the Alliance of Massachusetts YWCAs. They spoke favorably of these amendments. They also did mention a desire to see some additional streamlining and simplifying of the application process, which I believe my colleague Jose has mentioned in previous board meetings. There has been some progress made in that regard, and we're still working in collaboration with the Children's Investment Fund to continue that initiative. So all that being said, here once again today, this time I am asking for the board's approval to final approval of the amendments that were presented in November. There's been no additional changes made. And to authorize the Commissioner to file these amendments, these regulatory amendments, with the Secretary of the Commonwealth for publication and final promulgation.
Excellent.
I believe there's a motion before the board. If anybody has any further questions, I am happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Questions before we move the motion. Good. All right. So I will move that the Board of Early Education and Care, in accordance with General Law, Chapter 15D, Section 3F, having solicited public comment as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, hereby approves 606 CMR 15.00, the proposed amended regulations governing the early education and out-of-school time capital fund program. I further move that the board also authorizes the Commissioner of Early Education and Care to file the proposed amended regulations with the Secretary of the Commonwealth for publication in the Massachusetts Register as 606 CMR 15.00 in accordance with General Law, Chapter 30A. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sager, and I will call a roll. And I'm going to ask for some assistance on the phone with the vote, if you could help Chris with that when we get to that. So I'll call the roll of those in attendance here. Jamila Lee.
Yes.
Cheryl Travers.
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler.
Yes.
Maria Moeller.
Yes.
Linda Sager.
Yes.
Georgia Tanasoff.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes, and we're just going to try to get the folks on the phone real quick.
Do I do anything or just wait?
Chair, Jamila Lee.
Yes.
Cheryl. That is the worst.
It is.
They're just trying to unmute themselves so we can hear them.
Morisigo votes yes. Nikki Ruiz votes yes. And so the motion passes. What we'll do is we will.
Stephanie Churiton votes yes.
Thank you. And we'll be sure that the minutes reflect the wishes of the board, but the motion passes as presented.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
They can't hear us. So.
I can hear you, Stephanie. This is Carolyn, but I can't hear the meeting.
Can you hear us now? No.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry for the
Thank you very much.
technical difficulties there.
Apologies. Thank you
Yeah.
all for your work on this, and thank you, members, for your support. We look forward to maintaining this grant program in its two forms going forward. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything we can do to fix the?
So we're going to take another streaming time out here to try to address the sound. So we'll be back in 5 minutes again. Thank you. We're back. I'm going to reframe this as a celebration to our commitment to transparency and public access, that we are determined to get this right. And so thank you all for your patience. And with that, I will turn it over to the commissioner.
That is our commitment and our message. So thank you again, members, for your support for the regulatory changes. Now I'm very pleased to turn it over to Amy Checkaway, Adrian Murphy, and Ian Cutler, who are part of the team, who have been working on a very complicated rate package for consideration by the board. As you will recall from last meeting, we presented a number of options that the team had looked at. We were trying to achieve multiple goals and solve multiple problems. We are incredibly proud of the work that the team has done. We believe that the recommendations, all the options, but the recommended option that we're bringing forward today moves the agency and the field forward in absolutely the right direction in terms of thinking about equity geographically, by age group, and also making sure that we're really focused on the cost rather than just the price of care. And also recognizing that we are moving in the right direction, but not able to solve all of the things that we would like to in this first step, putting us in the right direction. So I'm going to turn it over to the team so that they can summarize where we landed, and then look forward to discussion with the board.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm happy to be back before the board, and Happy New Year to everyone. Just want to again reiterate that this was a team effort, and I am going to, everything I'm going to say is reflective of work that has in many ways been going on for a very long time in Massachusetts. So I'm going to start with a bit of context setting today, and so I'm going to say the most at the beginning of the presentation, and then go pretty quickly through the rest of it. But just for those watching, and again, now that we're through the holidays, as a way to refocus, thought it would be helpful just to do a quick overview and summary of what we're focused on and why, and where we're going. So I think it's helpful to just ground us always in why this work is important, both specifically and big picture, and we know how important and impactful our child care financial assistance rates are for families. Our rates provide direct needs-based financial assistance to increase low-income and vulnerable families' purchasing power in the market. This assistance really provides families with access to programs that they likely would not have been able to access and afford otherwise. And for programs that are serving families that are participating in our financial assistance system, our rates impact program revenue, they impact financial stability for programs, and the extent to which programs are able to invest in quality and workforce. So over the past 18 months, as we have continued to be on this journey together, the team at EEC, in partnership with researchers, has gathered and analyzed data that really tells us how much families pay for early education and care, including school-age care, in the private market, or the price of care, which, as you all know, is collected through what we call a market rate survey, and also collecting data about the cost to operate a program through both primary and secondary data sources. We know that the methodology that states use to set rates is critical, and there's increased recognition that a market rate survey is not necessarily the best or only way to determine child care financial assistance rates, as the prices that programs charge to families usually have more to do with the local market or how much families can afford to pay for care. Federal rules, as we've been talking about, really require states to use a market rate survey or an alternative methodology, which we are now positioned to move forward with, to set rates. So where are we in the journey? As you know, we completed a full market rate survey in 2022, and the board used the findings to help inform a historic $80 million rate increase last fall, so fall of 2022. The board also requested that EEC use data from both the market rate survey and our ongoing cost research to further assess the regional rate structure, and come back to the board with recommendations this year. Finally, the board also directed EEC last fall to work with the federal government to pursue a cost-based alternative methodology for setting rates. So, as you are well aware, since last fall, we oversaw the development of the first iteration of comprehensive models that calculate the cost of care, of providing care in different settings to different age groups in different parts of the state. These models tell us the extent to which our financial assistance rates cover the cost of care on a per child, a per classroom, and a per program basis. The Center for Early Learning Funding Equity, otherwise known as CELFI, partnered with us on this work and published their final report on the cost research findings.
Amy, can I ask you just to speak up a little bit?
I will try.
Apologies, but
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing on the phone.
Yeah. Absolutely. So CELFI partnered with us on this work and published their final report on the cost research findings and recommendations this past summer. It is on our website. CELFI recommended using the cost data to move forward towards a more simplified rate structure and more equitable rates by age, region, and type of care, with particular focus on beginning to address longstanding geographic inequities in rates. As the Commissioner mentioned earlier, finally, as of I think 5 days ago, Massachusetts is one of the first 6 states in the country federally approved as part of the next state plan cycle to use an alternative methodology when setting rates for child care financial assistance. This month, we will move forward with that work, and our next state plan formally goes into place this coming fall. So we can go to the next slide now. Moving towards our our strategy that we have been talking about for rate increases and rate structure reforms for this fiscal year. As a reminder, the strategy is grounded in 4 major goals, which we were really balancing and making progress on. First of all is recognition that all programs are facing increased costs, and you will see in our proposal today that this is addressed through using a portion of the care for cost of living adjustments to all rates. Second, using the extensive data we have and what we have learned about the cost of care to simplify the rate structure and address geographic inequities. The options we are putting forward today include consolidation of rates for regions that have similar costs and tracking progress towards rates covering the cost of care. Third, to make sure that we are ensuring that we continue to progress towards our market rates, meeting or exceeding the 50th percentile of the market rate, which we are currently still expected to do, again, until the fall of 2024. We are making sure to attend to this federal benchmark. And finally, we're really supporting quality investments or trying to across all programs by integrating quality rates into our base rates moving forward. Go to the next slide, please. So just to say a bit more, as we talked about last month, about the considerations to keep in mind for the second goal that was on the prior slide, which is using a cost-informed approach to simplify our rate structure and address geographic inequities. The 3 options that we shared with you last month for consideration include consolidating rates based on the Selfie cost research to varying extents. As you know, consolidating to either 2 rates to 3 rates or to 4 rates. As we know, the research found that the cost of providing care in some regions of the state was very similar to one another. So we used this information to actually make our recommendations about consolidation. Among regions that have similar economic factors, regions where rates are currently lagging behind their economically similar peers will receive larger increases in order to align rates and address inequities. We know that making this kind of adjustment requires resources, so the more we consolidated our rates, the less there is available for across-the-board increases. It's a trade-off. And also the less that is available towards further increases based on cost. The opportunity to consolidate feels very impactful as it allows us to address longstanding geographic inequities this year. And finally, it's important to note that across-the-board increases and consolidation do also help us make progress towards our market rate goals and covering the cost of care. Next slide. So this year we are very fortunate, as was mentioned, to have $65 million available for rate increases. These resources are located in 3 different parts of our budget, 2 of which are restricted to center-based care, and the third of which can be used for both family child care and center-based care. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it to Adrian just to talk through the sequence of calculations. As you know, Adrian is our Director of Data Analytics and has been a really important member of our team in terms of developing these options and doing lots and lots and lots of calculations and models.
Thanks, Amy. So just a reminder of the methodology that we use to allocate the resources for the rate increases for each of the 3 options that we shared last month. We start with the FY23 base rate and quality add-on. From there, we incorporated the QRIS into the base rates where relevant. From there, we then implemented an across-the-board cost of living adjustment to all of the rates in our recommended option. This is a 5.5% adjustment. Then we consolidated the rates across economically similar regions. And then, if funding allowed as a last step, we implemented a targeted increase based on our learnings from the cost study.
All right, so now a quick review of the 3 options that were put before the board last month. And Commissioner, you should feel free to chime in at any point if I'm missing something or if you want to add a context as well, please do. Last month, as you know, we presented 3 different options, trying to align them to all of the goals that I shared earlier. And the EC recommended moving forward with the 3-rate option that is shaded in blue on this slide. We really appreciated all of the feedback from the board and from the field, and we continue to recommend this 3-rate option because we think that overall it achieves the best balance of meeting the goals we set forth. We want to acknowledge that we are not fully meeting all of our goals today. That feels impossible, and that we remain on a journey towards a more accessible, affordable, and equitable system. In this spirit, our hope is to next provide you with details about our recommended 3-rate proposal, and Adrian is going to share those details about the recommended 3-rate option.
Thanks, Amy. Great. EEC's recommended option would result in 3 rates. It first involves a 5.5% cost of living adjustment to all rates. In this version, we then consolidate Metro Boston and Metro regions, the West, Central, and Southeast regions, and the Northeast region remains separate. We then use the remaining resources to increase center-based rates to 81% of cost, and that leaves 89% of rates at or above the 50th percentile of the market rate. Under this model, 44% of rates will then be at or above the cost of care, compared to 28% of the rates currently. And the lowest percent of cost of care moves from 56% to 72% under this model, and it comes in right at the $65 million cost.
I just want to jump in really quickly and mention that the board may recall that last month we didn't present data around family child care because the actions related to rate increases are both subject to board approval and action, and also to bargaining with SEIU 509, which represents our family child care providers. And we have had a chance to talk with them. They know we will be presenting to you our proposal and how the 3-rate option impacts family child care. So we've included those details in here, but the final approval on the family child care one will be subject to that bargaining with the union. I do want to say that one of the other things that I think we all felt strongly about in terms of the 3-rate option is that it did fully maximize the $20 million that was available for family child care given the structure of the budget. And so that felt like a very important piece of the puzzle as well.
Thanks, Commissioner. One of the reasons why we recommended this option is that it makes substantial progress towards the 50th percentile, with only 4 rates remaining below this 50th percentile threshold. And it moves 17 rates that were not previously at or above the 50th percentile of the market rate that now under this proposal will meet that threshold.
Oh,
great, thanks.
No.
No, that's perfect. So this slide has some additional detail about where our rates currently are in terms of covering the cost of care and how this 3-rate option would impact that distribution. So you can see here that of our current 36 rates, just over half or 20 of those 36 cover at least 80% of the cost of care, and about 1/4 or 10 of those rates cover 100% or more of the cost of care. With the recommended option, all but 3 of our 36 rates would cover at least 80% of the cost of care. And I think it's important here to acknowledge, which I know the board has talked about before, that because infant and toddler care is much more expensive than care for preschool and school-age children, programs typically charge more than the cost of care for serving preschoolers, so that they can offset some of those high costs for infants and toddlers, and to smooth the cost of care for families across the birth to 5 and birth to school age continuum. So it makes some sense to aim for rates that mirror the market as well as the typical business model of programs, and exceeds the cost of care for some age groups, in recognition that not that those will support infant and toddler care.
The other thing we should probably mention, and Amy, I'm sure you could do a much better job than I can on this, but the cost of care study contemplated both current costs as well as models that would have us at higher staffing and higher salary. And this is actually reflecting current costs. So aspirational in that we are looking at the cost of care and trying to move towards that, but not setting yet a higher cost that would reflect increased salaries as well as potentially increased staffing.
Yeah. Let me go to the next slide. Great. So this slide shows the daily rates for center-based infants, toddlers, preschool, and school-age children starting in FY22 in the white column on the left, and then moving through the last year's rate increases in the gray columns in terms of both the dollar and percent increase, and then showing the new rates and the percent increase in sort of yellow and yellowish orange that we're proposing for this fiscal year.
So we apologize for the complication and the number of data points on this slide.
Yeah.
But $145 million in rate increases over 2 years felt very significant in terms of the impact on the overall market for childcare. And so we wanted to make sure that the board had the full picture, as detailed and complicated as it is, about the impact of those 2 years of actions on the overall rate structure and levels.
Yeah, and I think we're excited about the 2-year increases here highlighted in the green columns. The cost research revealed that the largest gaps between our current rates and the cost of care is for infants and then toddlers following. And here you can see that these 2-year cumulative totals are generally higher for infants and toddlers, and we see the biggest increases to our rates for those 2 age groups.
You also will note, as you look at the green columns, the impact of the consolidation on some of the regions where we've had less increases over years.
Yeah.
So increases to the Western infant rates of 47% when we haven't had that in years past. So, and also a priority for our team was really focusing on infant care and the infant rates. We've had a lot of programs close their infant rooms, a lot of programs go out of the infant business. We hear so much from parents about the demand for infant care, so felt like that was something that was very important for us to prioritize through this package this year.
And in addition to that, as Amy mentioned earlier, this methodology is focused on increasing rates for those age groups and regions that are furthest below the cost of care, while also ensuring a cost of living adjustment across the board and embarking on this major consolidation effort. So within the resources available, we weren't able to address everything that we would ultimately like to in 1 year. But as you can see, we're excited about these substantial increases to rates in the areas of the state and age groups that have been the most under-resourced in the past. Great. We've also developed a comparable proposal for family child care rates in terms of the approach to consolidation and the across-the-board cost of living adjustment. Just as the Commissioner noted before, all of these rates are subject to final negotiation with SEIU Local 509. But you can see here the potential rate increases under this model for family child care providers under age 2 and over age 2. Great. As we mentioned last month, we also proposed to increase our add-on rate by $1 a day for programs with contracts to provide additional services to children involved in the DCF system, children of young parents, and children in families experiencing homelessness. These additional resources help providers to provide additional supports and services to these particular populations. And then we've also applied the same cost of living adjustment and consolidation approach to the FCC system administrative rates as well. I'll turn it back to Amy to sum up.
Great. So after all of that, here is a final summary of our recommended 3-rate option in terms of the estimated cost, the cost of living adjustment, targeted increases based on the cost of care, and some information about where we would land in terms of market rates and cost of care. As we continue to allude to, there are many potential future directions that we are looking forward to engaging in, which I can talk a little bit more in a minute, but perhaps I'll pause here for discussion and to engage with all of you about what is on your minds.
Okay. Yeah, I'll open it up to the board, and I know at the table there you're viewing the teams there. So if anyone from a board member might trigger that they have a question, please let me know and we can accommodate
Absolutely. And again, I want to acknowledge, although he was too modest to take on some of the presentation today. Ian Cutler, our Director of Strategy and Project Management, who was really a member of the core team that was meeting all the time about this work. So just want to thank you again, Ian, and to Leah Jack, who was here with us last month, who can't be with us here today. And again, all of the larger working group from EEC as well. So.
Great. Any questions from the board? We're good on that front?
I think so. I don't see anything yet.
If I could I just have a comment, and please extend thanks to first of all, our thanks to you all for being here and presenting, but to the extended team for your efforts on this. And Amy, as you reflected back, this is a conversation that you started the timeline in 2022, but I actually think this conversation predates even that for a lot of years. And so there's been a lot of change over the last year and a half as it relates to how we think about this rate reimbursement structure. And I think the numbers are really important. This feels like the right next step, although I think we all recognize it's not the final step, right? There's still work to be done. And I appreciate the mindset that has gone into this work, that we're already thinking about next year. We're already thinking about that next step and what we could do with what we had this year based off the significant increase we had last year. And already, again, I know we'll talk a little bit about that aspiration that you mentioned, but that we also are already starting to think about how to address some of the gaps that still remain in the structure that's presented to us, and getting to that place where the Selfie report discusses how we are thinking about competitive salaries and increasing the cost and making sure that's reflective of what the market is. And so just appreciative of the journey that this work has taken. And Adrian, I can't get out of my head you just crunching numbers, because Amy teed that up, of trying to get this right, really difficult. And I think the way that you guys approached the mindset in which you approached the work is evident. And again, just love that we're continually thinking about improving even going forward, which I think just is a mindset that is invaluable right now, given the place where we are right now. So that's just a comment. So.
And I'd like to say, you really have prepared the board for this vote today. I mean, we've been hearing about this at every board, not at every, but many board meetings. And it's really helpful because it's allowed those of us who are new to the board to really think about it, to understand the strategy and the methodology you're using. So thank you very much. And I appreciate this, the review that you all have provided today as well.
I think Stephanie has a question, and are we able to unmute her so she can ask it directly?
I'm going to ask Ian if he knows. I can read the question if not, but we can try for a minute. I don't know how.
I think if she just unmutes.
Yeah. Stephanie, or Chairwoman Carrington, if you're able to unmute, you might be able to ask your question. Otherwise, happy to repeat it from the chat.
Amy, you want to repeat it from the...
I just don't understand it. Sorry.
Hear me?
Oh, we go. There we go.
Yes.
Can you just give me examples of which cities or towns are in the new 3 regions? I'm curious.
Yes, so we are proposing consolidating to 3 rates, which clusters our current subsidy regions into 3 different clusters. And so one of the clusters is the southeast part of the state, so Brockton, Fall River, Western Mass, I know you know this, but Springfield, North Adams, and Central Mass, where we are right now, in Worcester, just as a few examples. And then we are similarly clustering Metro Boston and Boston, which I think is fairly straightforward. It's the city of Boston and the sort of surrounding ring of the greater Boston area. And then the northeast part of the state, so including Lawrence, Lynn, Andover, it will be sort of remain as is, for this rate increase.
But important clarification
Yes.
is that we're not consolidating regions through
Correct.
this proposal.
Not at this moment, no.
We are
Yeah.
making consolidated rates across existing regions. So those regions stay the same. The Northeast stays the same as it is in its current geographic form and has one rate. Metro Boston and Boston stay as two separate regions, but they're going to have the same rate, and the same for the other three. So it's a grouping of regions that now have a similar rate or have a same rate because of the similar characteristics in cost and economic indicators. But it's not a consolidation of rate of the actual regions. It's just the number of rates being reduced. Does that answer your question, Stephanie? And we're happy to provide a map.
Yes. Yes, there's a little map on this slide that is that shows the clusters of rates, which will be the same, or of regions that will
Sorry,
be the
I
same.
misspoke.
Yes, go ahead. There may be a lag of some amount of time, which I think is part of this.
Is there an additional question or clarification?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Before we move to a vote, I do want to just extend thanks to the administration and to the legislature, because we would not be in this position right now without the commitment of the resources. $145 million over the last 2 years is very significant and allows us to not just do this exercise in theory, but actually apply it to day-to-day operations of providers across the Commonwealth. And so gratitude to the administration and to the legislature for allowing us to be really thoughtful about this exercise and really thoughtful about how we meet the needs of providers across the Commonwealth.
So we're happy to say for just a couple minutes sort of what some of the future directions are. I think we've gone to some lengths to say this sends us in the right direction, but there are areas that we are watching carefully and that need additional attention. And you know, things like refining the cost of care. We're going to continue to work with outside researchers to help us refine that cost of care, think about existing costs as well as aspirational, as we talked about. And then we know there's additional disparities that exist, whether in regions or age groups, relative to the cost of care, relative to the price of care, and those are areas that we would also want to continue to pay attention to, should resources be available in future years. So we're just on this path. We also have had a lot of conversations around our informal care, or what's known as family, friend, and neighbor care, and rates in that particular part of our system are extremely low and haven't been addressed in many years. So that's an area we'd like to also think about for future. And then we're going to study what the impact is of consolidating these rates across regions and what that does to the market, as well as the increases in areas that have historically been left out of the larger increases. So we have a lot more work to do in terms of studying what the impact is of the changes we've made now, additional research around the cost of care, where we have opportunities for addressing disparities and making sure that we're intervening in the market effectively through this, as well as through our other strategies. And so with today's actions, we take enormous progress towards the direction we want to go in creating greater equity and recognizing what the actual costs of care are. But we do have a long list of to-dos to continue this work and to address what the needs of the field are.
Any other comments or questions from the board before we move to a vote? All right, I would make a motion to comply with FY24 line item language, federal rate reimbursement and family access requirements, and provide much needed support and financial stability to early education and care providers across the state, that the Board of Early Education and Care hereby approves the department's recommendation regarding the FY24 rate increase for providers of subsidized early education and care. Can I have a second? Second, George, thank you. And we'll call a roll. Jamela Lee.
Yes.
Cheryl Travers.
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler.
Yes.
Maria Mueller.
Yes.
Linda Sager.
Yes.
Georgia Tanasoff.
Yes.
Stephanie Carrington.
Do we have to do something? No.
Nikki Ruiz.
Nikki dropped off
Okay.
somehow.
Morris Eagle.
Yes.
Carolyn Kane.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. I just want to record Stephanie's vote there as a yes as well. Thank you to the board for this vote. I want to amplify the commissioner's comment there at the end. This is a significant step in progress towards a lot of years of work, and there is a long list of things to continue to do, but want to thank the board for their commitment to this topic and for their diligence and for the partnership with the department so that we continue to make sure that we are, there for and being responsive to providers across the Commonwealth, and so especially those that are serving our most vulnerable. So thank you to the board for this vote.
Great. Thank you very much, members of the board, and thank you very much to the team who has done incredible work and have a long list of work to do ahead. So thank you very much. Okay, I think Amy, you stay.
Yep,
You're staying for the next conversation.
Thank you,
We'll
Adrian.
invite Adrian, you're staying as well, and we'll invite Jocelyn Bound to rejoin us here. So as the board is aware, and we'll walk back a little bit to remind everyone, but we do a detailed survey every twice a year right now around the Commonwealth Cares for Children program. So this month, we're very pleased to be able to provide you with an update on the latest data about that program. We do have additional data that we are analyzing and hope to present in February. So this will be a multi-month conversation, but we felt that it was very important for us to at least share the data that we have all been tracking over the last several years, and to provide an update on where we are on some of those key features of how many programs are participating, how programs are using the funds, what the impact of those funds are on staffing, on stability in programs, on affordability for families. So I'm going to turn it over to the team to share with you where we are.
Thank you, Chris. Great, thank you, Commissioner. So I think just to jump back into this conversation, shifting gears from the rates a little bit and sort of broadening out and thinking about programs finances holistically. Just a reminder, the way we have been sort of looking at understanding program finances and thinking about the balance between the costs and the revenues that programs bring in. Traditionally, programs have relied on family tuition as their primary source of revenue, supplemented by a few other things. Sometimes there's philanthropic funding, grant funding, some food program funding, but largely the revenues come from families, and this includes the financial assistance that the state provides. So that's sort of where the rates would fit into this picture. And the program then obviously incurs costs. The largest of their costs, not surprisingly, are their staffing costs. But space, materials, I think we can all think about the types of costs and have spoken about the different costs that programs incur. In a functioning budget and a functioning market, programs would be able to balance these things so that their revenues cover their costs and potentially even allow opportunities for reinvestment in the program. And I think what we've been talking about over the last year with you has been the challenges that programs have in this balancing act. And one thing that the C3 funds have provided is that it's an addition to the revenue side of the equation and really has supported programs in their capacity to balance their budget, particularly at a time where we're also hearing from programs and seeing in our data the good news that compensation for educators is increasing, which is great for educators, it's great for our field, but it also puts more pressure on program budgets. So that has been a very critical role that we've seen that C3 plays in allowing programs to accommodate those changes while not having to simultaneously raise their own rates and shift the costs onto working families. So today we are going to talk about our most recent survey, and I think I will pass it over to Amy to Amy, or who am I passing it to?
Well, while you decide that, I'm going to jump in for just two more points of context for the board I'd like to make. So one thing we've been talking about a lot over the last year and a half is sort of the multiple levers that are needed to really support a healthy and stable early education and care system. And we just talked about $145 million in rates. That's really about increasing the purchasing power of our families and making sure those who qualify for child care financial assistance have access to more of the market. Those funds also provide incredibly important stability and financing for programs and for salaries. But we also know that the overall market, whether or not you're participating in the subsidy system or not, is fragile, and that working families across the state are struggling to pay for care and find care that meets their needs. And the Commonwealth Cares for Children program is an additional lever that helps us have direct support to programs, in addition to the financial assistance going to families. And we have found that this combination of these two levers, direct support to program and increasing the purchasing power of families together, remain a really essential piece of us understanding how to create a much more stable, well-financed, and healthy child care market. Similar to the rates thing, we have more work to do. The other thing I just wanted to remind the board is that we are in an incredibly fortunate position to actually be even having this conversation in Massachusetts right now. The Commonwealth Cares for Children program was a COVID-era funded program from the federal government that was intended during the height of the pandemic to stabilize programs and keep them from closing while they were either closed or while families were not sending programs. And it did that job. It got out there and it kept programs open. In Massachusetts, we recognized how essential this intervention in the market was to programs, and the Haley Driscoll administration last year, with the support of the legislature, fully funded it with state dollars when it had been a federal funded program. And I'll just say the story happening in other states right now is different. Many of you have heard stories about the cliff that other states are facing with the end of the sunsetting of these federal funds. Programs are closing, salaries are being reduced, families are losing access to care, and we are in a very unique position here in Massachusetts, or among states, in a unique position that we have been able to sustain this program, and we're able to report on its continued positive impact on the field. So with those two additional pieces, I'll turn it back over to the team to share what we've learned about C3.
So I am going to say very little in this presentation except just acknowledging and appreciating that the data that you are going to be seeing today was pulled January 1st or shortly thereafter in order to reflect a much larger response rate from our over almost 7,000, I think it's almost 7,000 providers whose data will be reflected in much of what you're seeing today. I will turn it to Adrienne next to talk through some of the key data points.
Great, thanks, Amy. As we've talked about in the past, one of the strengths of this survey is its reach, and I think it really provides us a unique opportunity to elevate the voice of providers in our work. And as of January 1st, we had heard from just over 6,800 providers since the survey was launched at the end of October. That's 84% of all providers statewide, not just those that receive C3 funding, but the full pool of providers. Includes 84% of center-based providers and 85% of family child care providers. And we see even higher representation of programs that serve children receiving child care financial assistance. We also looked at the response rates across region and see that it's a representative group of our providers geographically across the state. Great. Before we dive into the results of the survey itself, just a few slides to set the scene around the early education and care landscape more broadly. At the beginning of January, which is what's labeled here as current, our early education and care system had the capacity to serve just over 236,000 children, which is about 37,000 more licensed seats than at the height of the pandemic, and about 7,000 more than the sort of immediate pre-pandemic period. The license capacity of our family child care system has not quite rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, but at just 130 seats below pre-pandemic capacity, the license capacity of the FCC system continues to increase and is moving quickly in the right direction. Great. So this growth in license capacity is largely driven by the increase in the number of providers statewide. the number of licensed providers statewide continues to increase, but remains just below pre-pandemic levels, with just over 5,200 family child care providers and over 2,800 center-based providers as of the beginning of the calendar year. Yep. So the previous slides look at license capacity, which we know is not always a full reflection of the number of children that a provider is able to serve at any specific point in time. But through our monthly grant application data, we're able to collect information around the number of children that providers enroll, which this data is from December of 2023. And as of that point in time, center-based providers filled on average 92% of their license capacity with enrolled children, and FCC providers filled on average 82% of their license capacity with enrolled children. In this analysis, we first look at the percent of each individual provider's license capacity that's filled with enrolled children, and then average that across center-based providers and family child care providers, respectively. And given that the vast majority of our enrollment statewide, more than 80% of our capacity is in that blue center-based provider line, that's really, it's really this blue line that I think is most worthy of our attention and is the strongest indicator of the healthy enrollment statewide that we're seeing.
And potential opportunity within our family child
care system
for additional supports.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll just add that compared to some other similar data collected in other states, these percentages appear to be higher and again sort of reflect a healthier system for a variety of reasons in terms of what we have been able to maintain in Massachusetts. So.
Great. In each of our surveys, we've asked providers about their ability to serve their full license capacity. Specifically, we asked them whether they're able to serve their full license capacity, and if not, what barriers they face in doing so. And in this most recent survey, 30% of center-based providers reported that they were currently unable to serve their full license capacity. And the majority of those providers, 21% of all center-based providers, reported that unfilled staff openings prevented them from being able to serve their full license capacity. The good news is that this 30% is down slightly from 33% in the spring survey, and that the proportion that report that unfilled staff openings are preventing them from serving their full license capacity is 21%, down from 27% in the spring. I think evidence of promising movement in regard to some of the staffing challenges that we know that providers face across the state. The surveys also give us a lot of insight into how providers are using the funds that they receive from the C3 program. One note here is that we have, in this most recent survey, adjusted the way that we ask providers about how they're spending C3 funds, really to be responsive to some of the feedback from this board and from others. Previously, we collected the data from providers about their cumulative spending throughout the life of the grant. So we asked them how much funding they've spent in total in each of the categories. But now that as we move from this immediate stabilization period, we are now asking providers to report on their grant spending over a finite period of time. In this case, from the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1, through October 31st, when the survey was released. So the numbers here are not quite an apples to apples comparison to what we've shared in the past, but the trends are very much the same. Providers, center-based providers report spending the bulk of their grant funds, 60% of all funds expended on payroll and benefits. And family child care providers continue to spend the bulk of their funds, almost 40% on facilities and rent. Beyond these two categories, the next largest spending category is workforce investments, which includes 14% of grant funds expended by center-based providers and 11% of the grant funds expended by family child care providers. If we look across all of the spending categories related to the workforce, we can see that almost 2/3 of all grant funds expended during the period were spent on workforce-related expenses, including more than half of funds that were spent on existing payroll and benefits, and 10% of grant funds expended that were spent on salary increases or new or improved benefits for staff, really reflecting the key role that the program plays in continuing to support the workforce, both in terms of regular salary and benefits as well as future-facing workforce investments.
And I think that some of the percentages may seem smaller, but given the significant investment in C3, the amount of funds that they represent is significant when we think about this, especially over the course of a year, if these trends continue.
Yep. On the sort of in the workforce space, the C3 grant also allows us to track workforce salaries by role over time. In each monthly application, we ask center-based providers to report on the hourly wage of their lowest and highest paid educators by role. And then we use this to identify a midpoint between the two. As evident from the data, educator wages have risen steadily throughout the life of the C3 grant, with the average center-based educator hourly wage at just over $22 an hour. But in as a full-time, full-year equivalent, that works out to about $46,000 a year, which is still below 50% SMI for a family of two. So we've seen certainly wage growth throughout the life of the grant, but wages that still remain low. We also ask, as part of the survey, about the grant's impact on family affordability. And we specifically ask providers how C3 grants have impacted affordability for families in their programs. 77% of providers, which is up from 74% last spring, report that the grant has impacted affordability for families, with providers most frequently citing that the grant has allowed them to delay tuition increases or reduce or eliminate additional fees. And many providers also reporting that it has allowed them to reduce tuition for at least some families. Additionally, 18% of center-based providers report that the grant has allowed them to provide additional private scholarships for families, reflecting, I think, the many ways in which providers are using this grant and other mechanisms to increase affordability and accessibility for families. Excuse me. Beyond affordability for families, we know that C3 plays a key role in supporting programs in keeping the lights on and remaining open for children and families. And one of the metrics that we track closely across surveys is the number and percent of providers that report that they would close if C3 funding were not to continue. In the most recent survey, 1,161 providers reported that they would close if C3 funds were no longer available, which is up. Is 21% of family child care providers and 10% of center-based programs, both of which are up from last spring. So it's up both in terms of raw numbers and proportion of providers that say that they would close without C3 funding. These providers collectively serve over 20, or have the capacity to serve over 20,000 children, and those providers that serve families with child care financial assistance have about over 14,000 seats in their licensed program. So this is a number that we continue to track over time as survey results roll in to think about the real impact of these C3 dollars. We see this trend in part because we know that C3 dollars are really supporting providers in a number of ways. We ask providers about what C3 has enabled them to do, and providers report, as evident on this slide, that the grant has allowed them to remain open during the grant period, to continue to serve their desired number of children, to invest in educators, including increasing salaries and hiring additional staff, as well as investing in their physical space. More than half of center-based providers report that the grant program has allowed them to hire additional staff. I think highlighting both the way in which this program is supporting the workforce, but I also look at these bars on these graphs and think about the variety of ways that providers are using these funds to best meet the individual needs of their programs, and thinking about just the variety of ways in which the grant fund is supporting our providers. Finally, we ask providers about the changes that they would have to make if this grant funding were no longer available. We've already talked about the providers that said that they would close without this funding, but it's also clear that children, families, and educators would be impacted sort of across the board if this funding were no longer available. For example, 66% of centers and 57% of family child care providers report that they would increase tuition rates, and more than 60% of center-based providers reported that they would defer planned salary increases or benefit improvements. And 60% of all providers reported that they would reduce discretionary program expenses. And I think also of note, more than half of programs report that they would have to reduce compensation if grant funds were no longer available, speaking pretty clearly to the impact of these funds in supporting the workforce. As I mentioned at the outset, we're going to return to you again with both some further analysis of some of these data points as well as analysis of the many other questions we asked on the survey, but hope this was helpful in providing sort of a brief update of what we've learned initially from the survey, both about the status of C3, but also about the landscape of the early education and early education and care field more broadly.
Thank you for the input. I think it goes to the Commissioner's comment earlier about the importance of the multiple levers that are in play right now, and it does give a really good, outside of just the program, really good sense of like how providers are feeling, whether it's center-based, family child care center, and so thank you all for your feedback. I'll turn to the Commissioner if you have comments. If not, I'll open it up to the board for any questions or comments.
I just think if we're summing up, we're seeing that the program's having it's having the impact that we intended, which is that it is not just helping programs keep the lights on and remain open, but now we're starting to see it is helping to increase capacity. We are seeing salary increases. We are seeing investments in quality, in facilities, and new spaces that make sense for kids in our family child care homes, all while mitigating those increases in costs to families. And so really want to thank the team for the work that you've done to continue to analyze this data and ask programs. I also want to thank our programs for whom I know filling out this survey data is arduous. And I just want you to know we are very grateful for the time that you take to fill the survey data out, and we are committed to using it to understand the impact of the program and as we continue to understand its future state and impact as we go forward. So many thanks to our providers for providing the data.
As I look at Darlene here from the YWCA, just even hearing today from her how important these dollars are to what they're doing on behalf of children and families is just integral. So I agree. Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board?
Can I ask one? Yeah, just Adrian, on the I think it's slide 29 that you had, there's an unfilled staff opening of 21%. I think you said it came down from 27%, but either way, it's still a fairly large number. Is the main driver of that inadequate compensation for those staff positions? Is it lack of workforce readiness? Is it a combination of factors?
Yeah, we've asked in previous surveys about.
Can you just repeat
the question?
Yeah,
thanks. George asked about sort of the unfilled staff openings and what the driver or cause of some of those unfilled staff openings. We don't delve deeper in that specific question to know. We've asked in previous surveys both about hiring challenges and specifically questions around why individuals turn down roles. Is it salary? Is it sort of some of the challenges involved in the hiring process? We don't delve for those 21% to sort of within that question to better understand some of those root causes. But I think we have other questions in this survey and others that sort of help us understand and get at the root of that, and happy to come back with some more data when we return with more survey data to you to sort of help.
It was a comprehensive survey. I was just wondering if there was something there that you knew.
I think, just thinking back to some of the prior analyses, we've certainly seen that there are many instances where people are either leaving jobs for higher paid jobs in other industries or turning down jobs because of that. There's also just been a real challenge that's been reported across the field in getting people to even respond to postings for jobs, come in for interviews, and even engage in the hiring process. Yeah. So it's a combination, I think, of factors.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a double threat there, obviously, right? Because you hear a lot about tuition increases, but then what would you do with the money or lack thereof? It's defer salary increases, reduce compensation, reduce other benefits. So a problem that I guess will be before us for some time, but not one to solve today. But thank you.
I'll add that there's going to be certain layers to solve that issue, right? Like salary being one of them, workforce development opportunities is another one, and the department is certainly looking at all of them already and taking action and about them as well. I think one that we also need to recognize is the challenges that the workforce has right now because of the new post-pandemic environment and behavior issues, so the need for additional teachers, it's important, mental health support for staff as well as for children and families. So that's a whole other layer that we need to consider in terms of funding or the new or restructuring how the field works. I'll also would like to make another comment with regards to the impact of eligibility regulations and how that has impacted the results here too. Like, I'm assuming that more providers are coming into the field knowing that it's a little easier to have subsidized families enrolled, and that the department is willing to support them with regards to that process. So that's been a huge difference maker. So we need to recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, we hope that the combination of making it easier to do business with us, increasing rates, and offering childcare financial assistance to staff make coming into the childcare financial assistance system more attractive for more providers. And we have seen an increase, and that's something we'll focus on at a future board meeting too.
Yes, we hope with support from our federal preschool development grant funds to also have the opportunity soon to survey the folks who are the educators who are participating in this to better understand from them directly what the effects have been.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Maura, Nikki, Carolyn.
No questions. This is fantastic.
Yeah, Carolyn, no questions either. Thank you.
Nikki or Stephanie? Oh, Nikki dropped. Did Nikki drop? Mm-hmm. Stephanie, any questions for us? It's very hard.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you. It is, I think, Maura mentioned a couple of meetings ago, like, just we now have kind of these benchmarks.
Nikki or Stephanie? I don't have any questions.
Oh, Nikki.
About just, you can.
Stephanie, any questions for us?
I said I don't have any questions. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I just want to say thank you. It is.
Instant repeat.
I'll re-echo my thank you.
Echo my echo.
But it is just, it's really interesting now to see how impactful this program is, to have kind of baseline data, to have these regular updates on seeing the progress. And again, like everything else that we're doing, there are signs of progress. The work continues, the continuous improvement continues. Mm-hmm. The commitment and focus needs to stay where it is, but it's exciting to kind of just see the progress that, every once in a while a program works as you intended, right? And this is clearly having an impact. And again, echoing Maria's comments, I mean, I think we heard that loud. Many of the things you mentioned about behavioral health and mental health, like even on our tour today here, about the role that C3 is playing in helping to support the needs of children and employees right now, and so just critical. And so thank you for coming before us again, and looking forward to further discussion about ways that we can continue to understand what's happening in the field and make the appropriate decisions using all of the multiple levers that we kind of have right now. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, team. Great job. Always.
Really nice job. Well, with that, I just want to extend, and where we started with a thank you to the YWCA here in Worcester for hosting us today. It is so important to be out in the field, and it was great to be able to visit some of the classrooms. Appreciate everyone's patience as it relates to the technology. We are committed to getting it right and to being transparent and engaging here. So thanks for the patience on that. And with that, I would make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Maria, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The January meeting of the board is adjourned.